Um, we do have still a number of items to complete today. However, it looks like we might be ending early. So let's get started with agenda item number 14, the legislative report, update, review, and possible action on proposed legislation. I would like to turn this over to Heather Oliveris.
Excuse me, Dr. Rajo?
Yes.
But before we move forward, can we just do a quick check-in if we haven't already, just to make sure that everybody's back?
Okay. Yeah, I guess because their name is on the list doesn't mean they're actually here. Yeah, can I just call roll?
Yes, please.
Okay, Holly Kaiser,
Here.
Todd Borges,
Here.
Karen Chang,
Here.
Gilda Dominguez,
Here.
Debbie Snow.
Here.
Okay, it looks like all board members are here. Okay, so is Heather here?
Yes, I am here and I'm ready whenever everyone else is.
Okay, I think everyone is here. I think we can start.
Okay, good afternoon, board members and the public attending. I am going to give an overview of legislation that board staff has been looking at so far this year. I'm going to start with the legislative calendar. We just passed the deadline for the last day for policy committee to meet and report bills in the House of Origin. So what that means is any bill that has not been heard in its first policy committee will be considered a 2-year bill at this point and not moving forward this year. Another upcoming date is May 21st. That's the last day for fiscal committees to meet and report bills in the House of Origin. And then by June 4th, every bill needs to be passed out of this House of Origin. Then the process will repeat itself in the second house with a deadline of July 14th to hear bills in the second policy committee. And last day for fiscal committees to hear bills in the second house is August 27th. We have a number of legislative bills to look at for this year, but I just want to give a reminder that the board can adopt a position on any legislation that has been noticed in this agenda, and the possible positions the board can adopt are support if amended, oppose unless amended, or choose to just watch the bill. Board staff have included in the report recommended positions, but I just want to put out a reminder that any board member can entertain a motion for any of those positions I just went over. As well as members of the public can request that the board adopt a specific position on legislation. So if everyone is open to their report, the first bill on our list is a board-sponsored legislation, and it is AB 435. This is the locked hearing aids bill that we have spent the past couple years developing the legislation, and it is currently going through the process. This bill passed in the Assembly without any formal opposition and has now been referred to the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee to begin its process in the second house. A reminder of what this bill does: it requires hearing aid dispensers and dispensing audiologists to provide a purchaser with a written notice if the hearing aid being purchased uses proprietary or locked programming software. The written notice must be signed by the purchaser, and the licensee must retain a copy consistent with current record requirements. The bill has earned support from our stakeholders, including the California Academy of Audiology, the California Speech Language Hearing Association, and Hearing Healthcare Providers of California, and the East Bay chapter of the Hearing Loss Association of America. So since the board is already the sponsor of this legislation, we don't need to take an additional position, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Looks like none.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's probably not in this bill. However, as just a informational, if you would be able to answer this, with these notices, are they translated in different languages? Say, for example, an hearing aid office in Alhambra, which has a very high proportion of Asian clients or a high Asian population, would there be translation in, say, like Chinese and Vietnamese? Or if, say, this is in Bakersfield or Fresno, will there be translation in Spanish?
So at this time, there is not any requirement for the notification to be translated. It's certainly something the board can discuss, and the issue has also been discussed with Assemblymember Mullins' office already. So it is possible as the bill moves through the Senate, we may see some discussion around perhaps translating it in Spanish. But at this time, there is no requirement in the bill language.
Okay. Would you offhand know if there's like a general rule or regulation or a law that says that any of these things have, not just hearing aids, anything has to be translated in the appropriate language of that general population that lives there? Because I understand you can't translate everything, but in the general population where these clusters of ethnicities live.
I am not aware of a general overarching rule like that. I think it would be more at the discretion of the providers if they wanted to offer that service.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I would just add to that currently the thinking on this particular disclosure is that it would become part of the delivery receipt, which is a standard requirement for all hearing aid sales. And as far as I know, those are not required to be in other languages, although I think it's a timely issue for the board to start looking at, or the DCA in general to start looking at in terms of this requirement.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I think in drafting this legislation, the goal was to help keep the notification language itself relatively short so it can fit on those existing documents. Are there any other questions about this bill in particular?
Heather, do you want to ask for public comment on it?
Oh, yes, please.
So if there are no other board comments or questions, I'd like to open it up to the public to ask their questions.
All right. This is the moderator. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment on this item, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We'll give you a moment. This is the moderator. I see no requests for public comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Heather, would you like to proceed?
Yes. So the next proposal on our report is a proposal that would have modified the 12-month professional experience requirement for licensure to allow students to count hours from clinical experiences or rotations occurring prior to the required professional experience. professional experiences combined with the RPE experiences to meet the licensing requirement. The board was exploring including this bill in the Business and Professions Omnibus Bill. However, it was not included and will now be included as part of the board sunset review process in 2022. Are there any questions about this proposal?
Okay, not seeing any board comments. There may be some public comment, however, or questions. Can I open it up to that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question and answer panel is now available. If any member of the public has a question, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists. All right, this is the moderator. I see no requests for public comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next bill on the report is AB 486. This bill is currently on the Assembly Appropriations Suspense file. This is a education omnibus bill that includes a number of provisions, but a specific provision related to the practice of speech-language pathology regarding the assessment of a pupil's language and speech disorders in school settings. Specifically, this provision will update terminology to require a speech-language pathologist to determine that a pupil's difficulty in understanding or using spoken language results from speech sound disorder, voice disorder, fluency disorder, language disorder, or hearing impairment or deafness. Board staff is recommending that we watch this bill, and this provision of the bill is sponsored by Kesha and is designed to bring the education code up to date. This provision is limited in scope to only apply to speech-language pathologists practicing in elementary and secondary schools. Are there any questions about this one?
Hi, this is Holly Kaiser. I have a comment, and that is that I had worked on the language of this when, prior to being on the board, on the license board, excuse me. And when I saw this in our binder, I noticed an error in the wording where it says using spoken language. Spoken is supposed to be struck out because speech pathologists work with symbolic language, written language, and spoken. So I contacted Kacha to let them know I noticed that error, and I understand a couple days ago that an amendment was being put in to modify to strike that word. But I just wanted to let you know that.
Okay, yeah, at this time, as of yesterday, the amendment was in print, but yeah, it takes a couple days when there are amendments for them to be shown in print.
Thank you.
Are there any other board comments, questions? Okay, can we ask for public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Q&A panel is now available. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" and submit it to all panelists. All right, this is the moderator. I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
And Heather, just making sure that with the watch position, we don't need a motion on that.
That's correct.
Okay, would you like to go ahead then?
Yes, the next bill is AB 555, which is regarding assistive technology devices for special education. This bill is currently in the Assembly Education Committee. It was not heard in its first policy committee, so this will be a 2-year bill. This bill will authorize a local education agency or special education local plan to retain, sell, or dispose of an assistive technology device, including hearing aids, if the market value of the device is less than $5,000 and it is not needed for another individual with exceptional needs. We are recommending an oppose unless amended position because we have some concerns regarding the language of authorizing a school district to sell or fit or retain a hearing aid because if it's provided to another student, the hearing aid will need to be fit to that student. And this bill does not specify that a hearing aid must be fit by a licensed hearing aid dispenser, dispensing audiologist, or school personnel holding an appropriate credential. I have spoken with the author's office on this bill, and they said their intent is that students who have been provided with an assistive technology device will be allowed to keep the device when they age out of the education system. However, the current language is so broad by also authorizing them to sell a hearing aid. There is a code section in Business and Professions Code, which is section 2530.5, that states the practice of speech language pathology or audiology cannot be restricted or prevented when performed by school personnel holding a credential from the CTC. However, this bill will expand the scope of this exemption. Specifically, this bill will authorize school personnel with a CTC credential to retain, sell, or dispose of hearing aids rather than simply providing them. So, are there any questions about this?
Any other board questions or comments? Not seeing none. I'd like to verify that since this is an oppose unless amended, we do need a motion on this one. And the notion was to move that motion prior to public comment. Is that the case, Paul?
Yes, that is correct. We would have a motion and a second.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to oppose unless amended AB 555.
This is Holly. I move to oppose unless amended AB 555.
Do we have a second?
This is Karen. I second.
Do we have any other board discussion before we ask for public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to ask for public comment before we vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" and submit it to all panelists using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. This is the moderator. I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I think, Sharice, we can move forward with a call the vote.
Absolutely. Dr. Raggio,
Aye.
Ms. Kaiser,
Aye.
Mr. Borges,
Aye.
Ms. Chang,
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez,
Aye.
Ms. Snow.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, Heather, do you want to proceed?
Yes. The next bill is AB 1361, which deals with expulsions and suspensions in preschools. This bill is currently in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. This bill will require specific actions to be taken prior to disenrolling or suspending a child due to a behavior issue and will require the use of a suspension or expulsion only as a last resort in responding to a child's behavior. There is one provision that we are concerned about in this bill that would authorize a person with at least a master's degree in speech and language pathology to provide early childhood mental health consultation services. We are recommending oppose unless amended position because this provision authorizes a person with at least a master's in speech and language pathology to provide mental health services. It doesn't even specify that the person must be licensed or hold a credential, only that they have a master's degree and 2 years of experience working with children 0 to 5 years of age. Additionally, this bill defines early childhood mental health consultation services as a mental health service that develops the capacity of programs to serve and benefit a child enrolled in a child care and development program. Mental health services are outside of the scope for speech language pathology. This bill also has a similar provision for occupational therapy. So I have spoken with their board and they do plan to discuss this bill as well at their next board meeting. Are there any questions about this one?
Can I ask if you know who's in support of this bill? If there are any professional organizations in support of it?
Not related to us. There are a number of school districts in support. The California Association of Black School Educators, the California Charter Schools Association, and the National Association of Social Workers. There is no known formal opposition at this time. And I have spoken with the Board of Psychology and the Board of Behavioral Sciences, who their licensees would have to oversee speech language pathologists acting in this format, and they do not plan to bring this bill to their board.
Okay, any other board members with questions or comments?
So with this, you're recommending for us to oppose unless amended and to remove basically speech language pathology in the criteria.
Correct. We don't have concerns with the overall bill. It's very much outside of the scope of our practice. Our concern is specifically with the one provision. So our amendment would simply be just to strike out the speech language pathology from it.
Did you ask the author or the staff from the author's office why they included speech language pathology?
So they just basically included everybody who services this age group.
But it's not recommending that any other of these disciplines provide mental health consultations.
Well, occupational therapy is included as there as well, which is outside of the scope of occupational therapists as well, which is why their board will also be discussing this bill.
I would think there might be others.
Okay.
Okay, is there any other board comment? Seeing none, I'd like to ask for a motion to oppose unless amended this bill, AB 1361?
I motion to the board to take an opposed unless amended position on AB 1361.
Okay, that's Karen.
Todd, second.
Second.
Todd, second.
Yes.
Is there any, thank you. Is there any other board discussion before we seek public comment?
Hi, this is Holly. I think the one thing that comes to mind is that the speech pathologist and OT and others would be important as a member of a team in many cases when we're talking about mental health. So I guess I'm wondering if that was the intent, and if so, when we oppose this, do you see that there will be a way of making sure that we're recognized as participants on a team when needed?
I think we can definitely point out the role that they play. However, the language is still problematic in that it doesn't even require a license in how it's currently written.
I totally agree.
I don't think by striking it out with how it's currently worded will take away the role of speech language pathology. I think it will just make it so they're not becoming a mental, not providing a mental health service that's outside of the scope.
Okay, if there isn't any other board discussion, I'd like to open the opportunity for the public to ask questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the question and answer panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type. I would like to make a comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. All right, we have an individual identified as Michelle that would like to make a comment. Michelle, I'll let you know when you've been unmuted. You'll have 3 minutes and I'll give you a 30-second warning. Michelle, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. I have a question. Is the language written because the team members that would make that determination are child care providers in this preschool setting? We're licensed, and I think that in terms of, as speech language pathologists, the only commentary we could offer, and again, it's not outside of our scope to, if we know a client, to talk about their executive function or impulsivity, and some of those things that we may encounter because we know this person or we've been treating this person. And so exclusion from this language, I understand why it's problematic, but there has to be some sort of language that encompasses our ability to participate or at least opine in our professional sensibility about this person that they are going to make this determination on. And so I guess the clarification that I need is, when the author wrote it, and if they made it so lax, is that to open it up to, preschool teachers and those others that are on the team that are not licensed. I guess that's my question. And I guess the comment or the request would be that the amended language does reflect our ability to participate in that conversation. I yield my time.
All right,
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say there were no further public comments.
Heather, do you want to respond to that, though?
Yes, I think by striking the problematic language, it doesn't diminish a speech language pathologist's role as part of servicing a child. It's just that the way they structured what they're defining as a mental health provider is problematic. And so I think when I convey to them our concerns, I can say I can outline that our concern is only with how it is written currently, not with the role that speech language pathologists play, and kind of leave it up to them if they want to revamp their whole language to make it a team that is providing a service. But right now, the way they structured it is there's going to be oversight by people licensed as mental health providers, which is within the scope, like psychologists and other licensed clinical social workers. And it seems like that's the direction they want to go. They want to create a hierarchy, so to speak, of mental health providers. So it's sort of a challenge when taking a position and communicating with the author is we don't want to force them to take their bill in a direction just for our benefit, so to speak, but rather than outlining these are our concerns and this is what's problematic with it. If you choose to restructure your bill, then of course we're not going to have concerns with it as long as a speech language pathologist is not practicing outside of their scope. Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, are there any other public comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
Thank you for that explanation, Heather. So we have a motion in front of us to oppose unless amended AB 1361. Sharice, would you like to call the vote?
Absolutely. Dr. Raggio,
Aye.
Ms. Kaiser,
Aye.
Mr. Borges,
Aye.
Ms. Chang,
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez,
Aye.
Ms. Snow.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next bill on our list is AB 1236. This bill is currently on the Assembly Appropriations Committee suspense file. This bill will require healing arts boards to request specified workforce data from its licensees at the time of electronic application for a license and license renewal, or at least biennially from a scientifically selected random sample of licensees. The board will be required to report the data collected on a biennial basis and post it on the board's website. The board will also be required to provide the data annually to the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development. The purpose of this bill is to use the data collected to identify and address disparities in the workforce so the state can have a greater sense of the workforce shortage needs and conduct more targeted outreach strategies. However, since our board is currently on an old IT system, we do not have the capability to collect the data required by the bill at this time. So we would need to do this manually. Board staff would need to change all the application forms for each license type to collect this data and develop a form to be sent with the renewal reminder notices to collect this information every renewal cycle. This will significantly increase the board's workload, at least until we can get our new IT system in place. So we are recommending that we take an opposed position at this time, just because of the costs and the workload to board staff.
I'm just wondering, is this something that the Business Modernization Project will undertake to help us support?
I think
This is-
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sharice.
Sorry, this is Sharice. I don't think that the business modernization per se is intended to do something like this, but the business modernization makes it easier to add on a healing arts survey to a renewal or to an online application where after they've finished the renewal, the next button goes to whatever survey that they can fill out if they want to. And then it collects it all into one central repository. So this is something more doable in the future. But it's definitely something that would be really difficult for us to do now.
Okay,
And
oh, sorry, Heather, go ahead.
yeah, other boards that are also on older IT systems are also taking either oppose or oppose unless amended positions on this bill. So we are not the only board with this concern, but it's more of a concern for boards with the old IT system versus boards that are on Breeze that can more easily adapt their database to collect this information.
That's helpful to know. Are there any other comments or questions from board members?
This is Karen. Do you know what other boards, what their oppose or amend would sound like?
Yeah, the Board of Pharmacy adopted oppose unless amended position, and their amendment was for the Office of Statewide Health and Planning and Development to actually collect the data because their IT system can't either. And their offer was they would put a notice in their renewals to point the licensees to go to whatever source OSHPD develops to collect the data.
Can we do something like that similar, or?
Yeah, of course.
Would it create more work for the board?
So we would still have the cost to develop the form and potentially increased mailing costs for our renewals. And I think maybe Sharice can speak more to what our renewal looks like right now. But it is possible there could be some increased costs with that direction as well.
This is Sharice. It would include increased costs. Mailers usually add a small incremental increase, of course, as just like hearing aid dispenser, the forms that are required as we slowly add more and more, they get longer with more pages, so they cost more to mail out, and they also cost more in postage. The other thing being, as we move more to online renewals, many boards are moving towards postcard reminders to renew so that the board isn't spending so much money on mailing and on copying and postage for all these renewals as we get more people into online renewals. So it's something to think about. You can always redirect and say impose unless amended and hey, have those guys do it. But I mean, it's kind of neither here nor there if that's the route you would like to take. But anytime we're going to add something to our renewal, it does have an incremental cost increase, of course, unless it's straight up in an online renewal, which we won't have as much ability to work with until we're further into the business modernization process. So,
thank you.
Mm-hmm. Are there any more board questions or comments? Seeing none, I'd like to ask for a motion to oppose AB 1236 before we go to public comment.
I move to oppose AB 1236.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion. This is Holly.
If there isn't any other or further board discussion, or is there? If not, I'd like to open this up to public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type. I would like to make a comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. And I do see we have a comment from Brian Clifford. So Brian, I'll let you know when you've been unmuted, and we have a 3-hour limit. Brian, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that we've been working with OSHPD on sharing a lot of this type of data. Many boards share it currently, although we're always tweaking it and trying to provide the right data that OSHPD needs to do its workforce analysis. I guess the department does not have a position on the legislation that I'm aware of. But I guess I would just ask that the board consider not taking an opposed position at this time, just because we've been working with OSHPD on a very similar effort to be sharing this data, and in speaking with the staff at OIS, I don't believe that it's going to be as significant of an issue. So I'm not sure how needed the opposed position based on implementation on those implementation concerns, if that exists.
Would Heather or Sharice like to respond?
So Brian, you're saying that DCA would like us not to take an opposed position because we think we can somehow implement it through DCA?
Well,
Or that you guys will run it?
I don't know that the department is asking. I guess I'll just share. I'm just sharing my perspective of the work that I've been doing with OSHPD and with Sean O'Connor. And unfortunately, he's not on the call or the meeting anymore. But in speaking with him, I don't anticipate that this will be a significant cost or a significant impact to the board. I think we can find a solution that would work to address OSHPD's needs. There's also trailer bill language that would have us be sharing this same information with OSHPD or very similar. I think that there's some differences between the TBL as well as 1236. So I guess unless there's concerns with the actual language and some of the things that are being asked for, I don't think that implementing it will be as difficult as you guys I think initially thought.
I would suggest I have fewer concerns if DCA is saying that they have an IT solution, that this scientifically selected random sample of licensees can be picked and the data can be collected at the DCA level and then shared. But if it's got to be at our board level, that's where I get concerned. But happy to talk to Sean O'Connor and you for sure about whatever DCA is thinking.
And I do want to add that the bill is currently on suspense file due to the IT cost for the DCA boards. So I don't think we're the only board that would have costs with it since we're on this older IT system.
This is Todd. I have a question. If we were to take an oppose position now, since it's suspended, could we go back and revisit it and change our position in the future?
Oh, yes. If the bill, we will be meeting again in August, and depending what the bill looks like at that point, we can change our position.
Okay, so if at that point, if something comes out where it looks like it's something that's doable or is not going to have that much of an impact, we can always change.
Correct.
Thank you. Then I would recommend we keep it as it is for the moment.
Okay, before we go back to dealing with the motion, are there any other public comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
So as I understand what Todd was saying, I believe he is allowed to withdraw the motion, and we'll take a watch position if you wish.
I'm sorry, that was maybe a misunderstanding on my
Oh.
part. I was not asking to withdraw the motion. I was clarifying that we could keep the motion as opposed, and we could always revisit it in August and change our position at that time to watch if we so desired at that time, once things had an opportunity to maybe play out a little bit more.
Or can we just, this is Karen, can we just keep it as a watch right now?
Todd would have to withdraw his motion, or we have to vote on that motion.
Well,
That was my question too, if we can put it as a watch as well. This is Gilda.
If the majority of the board feels that they want to switch it to a watch, then I will withdraw the motion, since if we vote for it, everyone's going to say nay, and then we'll end up back to where we were. So I have no problem withdrawing the motion if everyone feels they want to change it to a watch position.
Is that the case?
My point was, I was thinking we could maybe change it to a watch position in August if, you know, once it has an opportunity to go through the cycle. But if we want to change it now, then I'm not necessarily completely opposed to that. I will bow to the will of the board.
I feel comfortable with a watch position. Any others who want to say?
I actually feel more comfortable with the watch position, because in a post position, I feel like is a bit more drastic than a watch position.
Hi, this is Holly. I feel comfortable with a watch. It sounds like there's some more communication that needs to go back and forth for this to evolve before we would take an opposition to it.
Okay, Gilda?
I'm also comfortable putting this on a watch, because we can further discuss the feasibility of following through with the demand.
Okay, then
Debbie?
I move to withdraw the motion.
So
I think if Todd withdrew his motion, I think that would suffice. We can watch the bill and then move on to the next bill. Thank you.
okay. Okay, thank you. Heather, do you want to go on?
Sure. The next bill is AB 29. This bill is currently on the suspense file in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. This bill will require the board to make all writings and materials for publicly noticed meetings available on the board's website and provided to any person requesting such materials in writing at least 72 hours prior to the meeting, or on the same day the writings and materials are provided to board members, whichever is earlier. This bill will also prohibit the board from discussing or acting on any items not provided in advance of the meeting as required. The board did have an opposed position on a similar bill last year, because this bill will result in the board being unable to discuss and act on agenda items if the materials cannot be provided in advance of the meeting as required. Although the board strives to get all materials posted on its website prior to board meetings, occasionally board materials require last-minute updates and changes. Additionally, the board does not currently have the ability to update its own website and must use DCA's internet team to post materials on the website, which requires a good amount of lead time for processing. This bill may limit board discussion and prevent some agenda items from being discussed at all. There are a number of boards that have adopted a position on this already, including the Board of Behavioral Sciences, the Board of Pharmacy, the Board of Professional Engineers, Land Surveyors, and Geologists, and the Dental Hygiene Board, which have all adopted oppose unless amended positions, citing concerns about the 72-hour posting timeframe and that certain material should be completely exempt from the posting requirement.
Is there some reason why we haven't taken a oppose unless amended recommendation?
We can. The only concern we would have is if a certain material is not directly exempt from it, we would still be limited if we didn't post it. And so I think the challenge is kind of identifying every possible material that we would want to be exempt. And if we missed one and it's not exempt, then we would have to comply.
This is Charisse, and I think the biggest concern is that this really limits the updated information we can bring to board meetings and the discussions that can occur. I know Paul has mentioned it before where, when we had in-person 2-day board meetings, sometimes a question would come up on day 1 and we could go back and get the information and have it ready for the board on day 2. It really kind of just stymies the information flow at that point. And usually, oppose unless amended, you want to have something specifically that that you are okay with changing that would remove your opposition. So if in general we're opposed to having our ability to discuss items stymied to when we can post something to the internet, then a general oppose is usually more recommended.
This is Paul. I just want to add to that it's a fine balance trying to have the materials ahead of time, but it's also trying to have the information that's needed for the board meeting. And sometimes, even during this meeting, we would have been limited in what we could talk about because some information does come to us later on, or we think of something after the materials have been prepared. So this bill makes it difficult for us to do that. Thank you.
Holly.
I'm sorry, I forgot to take my hand down from before.
Oh, okay. Is there any other board discussion or questions regarding this bill before we ask for a motion? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to oppose AB 29.
Hi, this is Holly. I make a motion to oppose AB 29.
Okay, do we have a second?
This is Gilda, second.
Okay, is there any further discussion before we ask for public comment? Seeing none, can we open it up to public comment or questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the question and answer panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. This is the moderator. I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, it's closed.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, Charisse, could you call the vote?
Yes, I can. Dr. Raggio.
Aye.
Ms. Kaiser.
Aye.
Mr. Borges.
Aye.
Ms. Chang.
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez.
Aye.
Ms. Snow.
Aye.
And the motion carries.
Thank you. Heather?
Okay, the next bill on our list is AB 107. This bill is currently on the Assembly Appropriations Committee. This bill will require boards to issue a temporary license within 30 days to applicants currently licensed in another state who are married to or in a domestic partnership with an active duty member of the military currently stationed in California. This temporary license will expire 12 months after issuance or upon issuance of a permanent license, whichever occurs first. This bill will remove current provisions that allow a temporary license to expire upon the denial of an application. Additionally, this bill will require the board to track applications and licensing statistics for military personnel and spouses. I am recommending an oppose unless amended position because this bill will remove a current provision that allows a temporary license to become invalid if the application for a permanent license is denied. The board already has a process in place to expedite applications for military personnel and spouses, so the board rarely issues this temporary license. However, since the bill eliminates this provision that would make a temporary license invalid upon the denial of an application, this bill could potentially allow unqualified individuals authority to practice under a temporary license for 12 months. Are there any questions?
Any board questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion to oppose unless amended AB 107.
This is Holly. I make a motion that we oppose AB 107 unless amended.
Okay, do we have a
I-
second?
I
Sorry,
second it.
Debbie?
Yes.
Is there any further discussion on this bill by the board? Seeing none, I'd like to open it up to public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Q&A panel is now available. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists. All right, this is a moderator. I see no requests for comment at this time. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's been closed.
Okay, if there's no other further board discussion, I'd like to ask Charisse to call the vote.
Dr. Raggio,
Aye.
Ms. Kaiser,
Aye.
Mr. Borges,
Aye.
Ms. Chang, Ms. Dominguez. Oh, sorry.
Aye, sorry.
Thank you. Ms. Dominguez,
Aye.
Ms. Snow.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Heather? Yeah.
The next bill is AB 225. This bill is currently on the Assembly Appropriations Committee suspense file. This bill will expand current law requiring a temporary license for applicants currently licensed in another state who are married to or in a domestic partnership with an active duty member of the military currently stationed in California to also apply to applicants who are veterans discharged within the previous 6 months and active duty military personnel who will be separating from the military within 90 days. Additionally, this bill includes a provision that allows a temporary license to expire upon the denial of an application, and this bill will also extend the time frame that a temporary license is valid from 12 months to 18 months. I'm also recommending a oppose unless amended position on this bill because of similar concerns with the last bill about eliminating a provision making a temporary license invalid upon the denial of an application. This bill could potentially allow unqualified individuals authority to practice under a temporary license for 18 months. Are there any questions about this one? It's the concerns are the same as the last one that we took opposed unless amended position on.
I just ask an aside, how does a domestic partnership, how is that verified?
California does have a formal domestic partnership process. I believe it goes through the Secretary of State, but I may be mistaken. There is an actual formal process to become a domestic partner here in California.
So for bills like this, you have to actually demonstrate this legal relationship?
I'm going to defer if Charisse knows on the licensing, how we do the process.
I was going to ask Lisa to chime in. It's so rare. We don't get that many military license applications in the first place or military spouse. Normally, they all come with paperwork associated with it. And those states that have domestic partnership laws usually have some form of registration, which has some verification included in it. So.
Yes, it would be, this is Lisa, they would receive some sort of registration that certificate, and that would be submitted with their application and verified in order to proceed with the process.
Okay. Is there any further discussion or are there questions by board members regarding this bill? Seeing none, I'd like to call for a motion to oppose AB 225, unless amended, excuse me.
This is Gilda. I move to oppose, AB 225 unless amended.
Do I have a second?
This is Holly. I second.
Okay, if there isn't any other further discussion by the board, I'd like to open this up to public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We will give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, can I ask Charisse to call the vote?
Absolutely. Dr. Raggio,
Aye.
Ms. Kaiser,
Aye.
Mr. Borges,
Aye.
Ms. Chang,
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez,
Aye.
Ms. Snow. Ms. Snow? I think it looks like Ms. Snow might be having audio problems. Okay, currently that is at 5-0, and that does pass. We can always check back in with Ms. Snow on her audio connection as well.
Okay. Okay, we will do that. Heather, would you like to proceed?
Yes. AB 646 is currently on the suspense file in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. This bill will require boards that post information on their website about a revoked license due to a criminal conviction to post the expungement order if the person reapplies for licensure, or remove the initial posting if the person does not reapply for licensure within 90 days of the board receiving an expungement order related to the conviction. The board may charge a fee not exceeding the reasonable cost of administering this provision. Board staff is recommending a watch position. This bill will require the board to create a new process for license verifications. License verifications are critical when reporting prior discipline to other state licensing boards. And since this board only removes the conviction from the public website and does not remove the board's ability to report to other state licensing entities that the license was revoked, the board would need to make a process change in how these verifications are prepared by stopping usage of the public DCA license search and instead using the board's internal IT system. The workload for this new process will be minor and absorbable. Are there any questions about this one?
Any board questions or comments? Seeing none, I'd like to ask for public comment at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type. I would like to make a comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We will give you a moment. This is the moderator. I see no request for public comment at this time. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's closed.
Okay, since we're taking a watch position on this one, we don't need a motion. Can we move on to the next bill?
Yes. AB 885, this bill is currently in the Assembly Governmental Organization Committee. Since it was not heard in its first policy committee, this will be a 2-year bill. This bill will amend current law regarding public meetings held by teleconference to only require the agenda to include a primary physical meeting location where the public may physically attend and participate. Board members attending the meeting via teleconference or physically at the primary physical meeting location will count toward establishing a quorum. And this bill will require public meetings held by teleconference to include both an audible and visual means of participation. Board staff is recommending a support position because in the past, the board has experienced difficulty in finding locations available to the public for board meetings held via teleconference. This bill will alleviate this issue by only requiring one location where the public may physically attend and participate. Additionally, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the board already has a process that allows the public to participate remotely in meetings held via teleconference. And this technology has the ability to allow for both audible and visual means of participation. Are there any questions?
Debbie?
Yes, I just wanted to try audio again.
Okay.
Is it working? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's working.
Thank you. I was waiting for a moment to try. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Are there any other board comments or questions regarding this bill? Holly?
So in the summary, it says that visual would also be required, and we're obviously not doing that right now. So if we were in a situation where, like this pandemic, where we're needing to do everything virtually, would we need to do visual under this new law?
Yes, that is correct. We would need to do visual, but the technology we are using right now does allow for visual. We just don't have that option turned on. So it would just be a matter of basically setting our meeting to also include that feature, but it wouldn't require any new technology other than what we already have been using this past year.
Okay, thank you.
My understanding is that to use visual has some kind of glitches in terms of losing contact and so on with using the visual portion of it. Is there
So this
any?
is Teresa. I just wanted
Sorry.
to confirm. Just wanted to confirm what Dr. Raggio was saying is that other boards that have turned on, every single board member has their video projecting onto the program. Some of them have experienced where by using the video and increasing the bandwidth on that meeting, that some members do get kicked off and have to rejoin. So it sometimes can cause some glitches. So
Okay.
that is currently why we don't use it. But we could always find additional ways of even looking at grouping people. So some of them could be here. Our conference room has a webcam. Board members could also attend the meeting virtually together, obviously not during the pandemic, but future. So post-pandemic, it does provide more opportunities and a little more flexibility.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, before we ask for public comment, I would entertain a motion.
This is Holly. I move that we support the position on AB 885.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion from the board? Seeing none, can we open this up for public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Q&A panel is now available. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists. We will give you a moment. This is the moderator. I see no request for public comment at this time. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, it's closed.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'd like Sharice to call the vote.
Absolutely. Dr. Raggio,
Aye.
Ms. Kaiser,
Aye.
Mr. Borges,
Aye.
Ms. Chang,
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez,
Aye.
Ms. Snow.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, Heather.
Okay, the next bill is AB 1026. This bill is currently on the Assembly Appropriations Committee. This bill will require boards to grant a 50% fee reduction for an initial license for military veterans who provide satisfactory evidence with their application. This bill defines satisfactory evidence as a driver's license or identification card with veteran printed on its face. I am recommending a watch position since the board has such a small licensing population. The board has a small licensing population of military personnel and spouses. On average, the board receives less than 50 applicants from military personnel or spouses per year, so the revenue loss by reducing the initial license fee for military veterans would be minimal. Any questions about this one?
Was this bill heard May 5th in the Assembly Appropriations Committee?
Yes, it was, and it went to the suspense file, which means in a couple weeks, the Assembly Appropriations will revisit all these bills on the suspense file and decide which ones they're going to move forward and which ones will stay on the suspense file.
Is there any reason not to support this since the revenue loss would be minimal? We don't have many. Is there some reason not to?
No, the board can definitely entertain a motion to support. Generally for these, I stay with watch just because our population is so small, but there is no issue with going with the support either.
But you advise watch just to see the eventualities with it?
More because there is a revenue loss, but it's minor. So if we want to take a position that we're supporting helping veterans become licensed, there's definitely not a concern with going in that direction.
Hello, this is Paul. I had a quick question for Heather.
Yes.
Heather, did we find out what, if any, IT costs were involved in structuring this so that we could take the decrease in the initial license fee on our system?
I don't believe we did look into the IT costs for this one. I think they're strictly looking at what is your licensing population and will the dollar value of that decrease be a concern? Because there's definitely boards that have a very large military personnel licensing population, and obviously the financial hit to them would be much greater than to us with our 50 applicants per year. But we did not look into the IT impact.
Okay, so I assume that there would be just some one-time initial costs in reprogramming.
Yes, usually those are considered minor for IT, somewhere in like, I think it's like the $5,000 range or something like that. For us, for the minor one.
Okay, thanks.
So I'd like to elicit opinions from the board regarding whether to continue on a watch position with this bill or change to a support position.
This is Todd. Being a veteran myself, I typically would support anything of this nature that would support our military or their families.
Thank you. Anyone else?
This is Holly. I was really on the fence, but hearing Todd say that, I'm kind of swayed over to supporting it.
I would support it also. Anyone else with a thought about it?
This is Gilda. I agree. I support that. Thank you
Okay.
for your service.
Any other board member with an opinion? I think that was at least 4 of us with that opinion of changing it.
I'd go for support.
Okay. So I think that's could be 5. I actually didn't tally that. So if we did change it, we would have to have a motion for this bill.
That's correct. We just need a motion in a second.
Okay, anybody?
I move that we change our position to support for AB 1026.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second.
Is that Karen?
Karen.
Okay. Is there any further board discussion on this bill? Seeing none, I'd like to ask for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've now opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment, please type. I would like to make a comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We will give you a moment. This is the moderator. I see no requests for public comment at this time. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, with no further discussion, I'd like Charisse to call the vote if she would.
Absolutely. Dr. Raju,
Aye.
Ms. Kaiser,
Aye.
Mr. Borges,
Aye.
Ms. Chang,
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez,
Aye.
Ms. Snow.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've got a few more to look at today, Heather.
Yes, the next one is SB 607. This bill has been rescheduled for its hearing in Senate Appropriations Committee to May 17th. This bill will, among other things, require boards to waive all fees associated with the application and initial license for applicants currently licensed in another state who are married to or in a domestic partnership with an active duty member of the military currently stationed in California. This bill was also recently amended to authorize board members to attend a teleconference from an undisclosed location. The board will not have to provide a physical meeting location, but will need to provide the public with means to participate remotely. I initially had recommended a watch position, but in light of these amendments, and also since the board just supported waiving fees in the previous bill, the board may wish to consider a support position or possibly support if amended to further clarify the language regarding the fees. And the only concern I have with the current language is since it says application and initial license fees, it is possible that could include waiving exam fees and fingerprinting fees. So we may wish to request that they clarify that language if we do go with a support, if amended position. But then again, our licensing population for military is less than 50 applications per year. So even if we have to waive exam fees and fingerprinting fees, it's not a huge amount. So just a couple possible options of different directions the board may wish to go on this bill.
Would it be helpful to the board staff if they didn't have to check more boxes of what has to be waived? Is that a difficulty at all? I mean, fingerprinting fees and so on, making sure that those things, all the boxes are checked. Is it more trouble for you if it doesn't spell it out?
I'm going to see if maybe Lisa can speak to that or Charisse.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
I'm not sure what the process is, but if we have to waive or check to waive additional fees, is that a burden on the board in terms of whatever your mechanisms are for checking those things if it isn't spelled out in the bill?
If it's
Maybe
not spelled out in the bill, that would create a little more work. I think we would just need to add additional boxes to all forms and all like exam applications. It's kind of hard to tell because I mean, and the fingerprinting one, I'm also not completely sure how that would work if that's included. It is much cleaner and simpler if it is just the initial application because that's something we already have and we already check for, and that's easier to just waive and also to program into the system to waive when that box is checked. So. Lisa, did you have anything?
No, not really. I mean, we have so few of these applications. It would create a little bit of a workload if the fees were waived for all types, especially when it comes to exams. But it's certainly something that could be done within a short period of time for staff.
Todd?
Just to make sure I'm clear, this is only for those who are currently licensed as an audiologist or dispenser or what have you in another state. This is not someone who is a spouse of a military member who wants to become a dispenser or get their license in the state for the first time. This is someone who currently has experience and is licensed.
Yes, this is someone currently licensed in another state that's a military spouse.
Okay. Because, I mean, looking at it, it's like, well, we're giving them more than we are the veterans in the previous bill. The previous bill, the vets only get 50%, whereas in this one, we're giving them everything. But I imagine the group is even smaller, as you say, if it's someone who's currently licensed.
And there was probably an oversight on the part of the author's office to not include those kinds of fees. So would it be an incredible burden on them to add that sort of language, do you think?
You mean to expand it to also include veterans and not just military spouses?
No, I just mean the additional fees you were talking about, fingerprinting and so on, that they actually spell that out. I mean, if we oppose if amended, would we be able to submit our amendments or suggested amendments to the language and not without causing a big burden on the author's office to make those small changes?
Oh yeah, it wouldn't be a huge burden because it is already ambiguous in the language. Well, what exactly fees are they wanting us to waive? Are they wanting it to include fingerprints and exam? I think it's nuance for us, but not necessarily without the legislature knowing our process. They may not even know that this is unclear to us what exactly they want to be waived. So by submitting what our amendments are, we're just basically asking clarify what it is you want us to waive, and that we're suggesting it's only the initial license application fee.
So I suspect they would entertain adding all fees in there. This was heard on May 10th, is that right?
No, it was rescheduled to May 17th. I imagine because they recently amended it to include the language regarding the teleconferencing, that they want to look at all of that language together.
Well, I never think it's a bad idea to spell things out with as much clarity as possible, because you never know what issues are going to come down the road. So I would be in favor of supporting if amended, but are there other board members who feel otherwise? Want to keep it as a watch?
I would agree. I think it should be spelled out. What exactly are you providing to them for free? Because, I think the application fee, yes, but some of the others, I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that. So I would like to know precisely what they're discussing. Obviously they would need some sort of guidance from us as to what that is. But I would support opposing unless amended.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members? Gilda?
Yes, I agree that it would be beneficial to find out specifically what the additional fees are, what all entails in that verbiage, and have it clearly spelled out.
Thank you. Anyone else with a thought or opinion?
Well, I do. Instead of a flat out oppose, can we do a oppose unless amended, or also do a watch?
Well, I was going to ask if we can, is the vernacular support if amended? Is that,
Oh, yes, support if amended.
is that possible, Heather?
Dr.
Yes,
Roger, can I chime in? Oh, go ahead.
Oh.
I just
either,
want, go ahead, Heather. I'm sorry, is that Heather or Sharice?
it's Heather. I was
Okay,
just
good.
going to say the board can do support if amended, watch, or oppose unless amended. But I want to point out when you do as amended for either position, it's us telling them what we want the amendments to be in order for the bill to be supported by us. So, for example, we would need to say this bill should be limited to only waiving the application fee. We're not getting clarification from them. We're telling them what we want to see the bill look like, if that makes sense.
Is
I
it
agree.
possible?
I was just gonna say the same thing. I think at this point, since we don't have specific direction to them, we may not want to support unless amended. We could actually watch the bill and still reach out to legislative staff and then come back to the board with more information.
Okay, that sounds good. Gilda?
Sorry, I'll take my hand down.
Oh, okay. So would the board feel comfortable maintaining the watch position for this bill at this time, since we have an avenue to readdress this later?
I would, as long as we have wiggle room, that's agreeable.
Mm-hmm. Holly?
I agree with being comfortable with watch.
I'm comfortable with watch.
Anybody
Me
not
too.
comfortable with that? Holly, did you have another comment?
No, I apologize.
It's an occupational hazard. Okay, so it looks like we're fairly comfortable leaving this at the watch recommendation, if we can come back to it later. So if there's no other board discussion, I'd like to open this up for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Q&A panel is now available. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We will give you a moment. This is the moderator. I see no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, since we're taking a watch position, we don't need a motion on that bill. We'd like to move to the next one.
Okay, SB 731. This bill is currently on the Senate Appropriations Committee suspense file. This bill will expand criminal record relief by way of petition to any felony conviction, specifically those that are punishable by a term of incarceration in state prison. This bill will also expand automatic arrest record relief for specified convictions. This bill will expand upon recent criminal justice reforms by creating further mechanisms for conviction dismissal. Current law already requires the Department of Justice to exclude records of arrest and conviction that were granted relief starting July 1, 2022, and this bill will expand upon the types of arrests and convictions that must be excluded. We are recommending a watch position at this time.
Maybe you could put that in lay terms. Oh, this the legal language is daunting in some cases.
It's basically after AB 2138, we saw some legislation that is addressing the records that we receive from the Department of Justice and requiring the Department of Justice to review their records. And if certain convictions ended up being dismissed or were granted a relief, they need to be taken off the report. So basically what this means for us is when we do our background checks, if something falls under the records that have to be, that can't be included on that report, we won't see that that conviction had occurred.
Is there an obvious downside to that? For us, I mean.
This is Sharice. I think there's definite downsides, but I don't, boards have lost this argument now twice. So I think there's not as much, what do you want to say, initiative to push to oppose some of these additional, you can't see them bills where it's like, it'll just remove things off the criminal background check.
Was this bill heard on May 3rd?
I am looking right now. Yes, and it was placed on the suspense file on May 3rd.
Okay, is there any further board discussion about this bill?
Yeah,
Holly?
this is Holly. Yeah, thank you. Is relief the same as expungement? I'm just not familiar enough with what that means.
Please check the number and dial again.
Hi, this is Paul. I don't think that this is referring to expungement. I think this is using relief in terms of how the board deals with the records. And I would defer to...
Welcome to WebEx. Enter your app.
Hello? Can everyone still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
And I was just going to ask our legal counsel if he had any input on that. The way I understand it is when we're talking about criminal record relief, we're talking about in terms of the board interaction with these records. I also think we might have connection problems with Heather, and I think Sharice was going to. Okay, I think she's able to still talk. But our recommendation is a watch position.
Were we going to wait for Mr. Payne to? Or is he having difficulty too?
I don't see him on our list of attendees, so hopefully.
Oh, I do.
Questions. Oh, do you? Okay.
But the microphone keeps coming and going.
Okay.
So it sounds like relief means that we don't have access to that information.
Right, because
they don't have to supply it.
Right, because expungement is a specific legal term dealing with those crimes and criminal records.
I'm currently perusing the bill, and so far what I'm seeing is relief in the form of no longer being on an arrest record that would be available. Usually this means for DCA and other employment purposes, but usually doesn't include law enforcement and other things who would have full access no matter what.
Mhm. Okay.
That makes sense to me now.
Is there any other board discussion on this bill?
Can you tell me, this is Karen, can you tell me again why we decided to put a watch on this one?
I don't know if Paul, you want to speak to this, but from experience, I think we've gotten to the point where some of these are you can oppose all you want and we can try all we want, but we're not really getting traction on these issues with the legislature, and especially in the forms of why we should be able to see them, and a lot of the ability to use them for the purposes of licensure or denial of licensure was already kind of taken away in 2138 and 1076 a couple years ago. So it kind of becomes a moot issue on it. If you can't use it for the purposes of denying a license, do you really need to see it on the arrest record? And is it really worth putting an opposed position out there for that? So it is kind of more of a political consideration.
Right, got it.
Hello, this is Anthony. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I just decided to leave and then rejoin. So I think I heard most of it, and I think I would tend to agree with that. Essentially, the expungement's a term of art that's you're seeking specific court relief, while the other term that you've mentioned is just going to bar consideration for purposes of board discipline. Is that what everyone's understanding has been thus far?
Yes.
I think so.
I think it's also helpful to understand that a lot of this deals with applicants rather than licensees, where we do have more purview and we do get subsequent arrest notifications from the Department of Justice. So.
Is there any further board discussion? Seeing none, let me open this up for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question and answer panel is now available. If you would like to make a comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We will give you a moment to access the feature. This is the moderator. I see no request for public comment at this time. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, since we're keeping a watch position, we don't need a motion on that bill, and we have a couple more. Heather?
Oh, can hear me?
Yes. There's an echo, but I can hear you.
Okay, why don't I go ahead and kick it off then while Heather's working on her audio. So SB 772, Ochoabo, Professions and Vocations Citations, Minor Violations. This bill is currently in the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee. The bill would prohibit the assessment of an administrative fine for minor violations if the licensee corrects the violation within 30 days. Minor violations are defined as those that do not pose a serious health or safety threat, are not willful, do not occur while on probation, and are not violations that the licensee has a history of committing. The board often uses its authority to issue citations and assess an administrative fine for minor violations of the Practice Act. And examples of these kind of activities include that we've issued citations for in the past include unlicensed activity, false advertising, not cooperating with a board investigation. The citation and fine is another tool in the toolkit of the board to enforce the laws and regulations. And these administrative fines serve the purpose of preventing future violations, protecting consumers, and support the cost of the investigation leading up to the citation. Over the past 3 years, the board has issued an average of $12,983 per year in citation and fine charges, and all of these cite and fine charges fall within the definition of minor violation under the bill, which would prevent the board from assessing administrative fines for any of these violations. And that is the reason we are suggesting an opposed position. While this bill may have been targeted more towards the pandemic-related citation and fines for other boards, such as Barber and Cosmo and others, this is citation and fines an important tool in the toolbox of enforcement for the board. And if the board can't cite and fine someone for not cooperating in the board's investigation, that becomes problematic. Sometimes that is the thing that pushes people to start working with the board and start responding. So I think removing that tool, it seems like a knee-jerk response to something that's happening within the last year and a half in other boards, and it's kind of a wide swath, painting a large brush, which we don't recommend either. So we recommend an opposed position.
Paul?
Yes, I just want to add to that, that contrary to popular belief, we don't, or to some opinions, we don't bring in a lot of money with citation revenue. That citation, as was mentioned earlier, is for consumer protection. It also serves as a deterrent. It's educational. If this bill were to pass, enforcement would become a cat and mouse game in which you would point out a flaw or something, a violation, and someone would correct it just because you pointed it out. But if you're able to cite and fine licensees who violate these laws, then it acts as a deterrent to do it again. If they know that as long as if they get caught, they have to pay or they have to comply, they're just going to keep doing it. And in the past, this board has had that experience. Thank you.
So would you say this is fairly effective, the cite and fine process in deterring future violations?
I think it can be, yes. And again, just to a good example would be, refund issues. If licensees only give refunds because the board points it out and not because they're abiding by the law, then it becomes a constant, more of mediation work instead of just expecting licensees to abide by the law. Same with other things, advertising or not cooperating with an investigation. Okay, I'm going to cooperate because I'm about to get cited, not because the law requires me to.
What would be a maximum fine?
The maximum fines are, we have two different sections of law, but we can fine on the speech and audiology side, I believe, up to $5,000. And on the hearing aid dispenser side, I believe that amount is less. Say it's $2,500.
Okay, is there any further board discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to oppose SB 772.
I move to oppose SB 772.
Do we have a second?
I second it. Debbie?
Okay. Okay, is there any further discussion on behalf of the board regarding this bill? Seeing none, I'd like to open this up for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question and answer feature is now available. If anyone would like to make a comment, please type. I would like to make a comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We will give you a moment. This is a moderator. I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, with no further discussion, Charisse, could you call the vote?
Absolutely. Dr. Raggio,
Aye.
Ms. Kaiser,
Aye.
Mr. Borges,
Aye.
Ms. Chang,
Aye.
Ms. Dominguez,
Aye.
Ms. Snow.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Okay. Looks like that was our last item under agenda item 14. Thank you, Heather, for all the work you've done to put this together and provide us with all the information so we could make a good decision. I'm just wondering if people would like to take perhaps a 10-minute bio break.
Yes, that would be great.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so let's say we come back at 2:35, 2:40. Let's go with 2:40. Oh, or 35. Items to cover today. I'd like to move on to agenda item 15, legislative items for future meetings. And I'd like to turn it over to Heather and Charisse for that discussion.
Hi, this is Heather Olivares. I do not have any additional legislative items to bring to your attention. There are a few more I'm watching internally, but at this point, they're not of concern to us. I'm just monitoring to see what direction they go in. But this is also an opportunity if board members have any legislative items they'd like to discuss, as well as anything the public would like to bring to our attention.
Okay, are there any board members with items they'd like to discuss? Seeing none, can we ask for public comment on any items they would like to discuss?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on this agenda item, please type. I would like to make a comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We will give you a moment. This is the moderator. I see no request for public comment at this time. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
This item says whether to hold a special meeting of the board to discuss such items. So I don't think there are items for the board to discuss, but there may be future legislative items that committees will be discussing and then bringing to the board. Charisse, would you like to add anything else?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so not take any more action on that. We've already covered item number 16, so I'd like to move to 17, discussion and possible action regarding audiology licensing requirements. And I believe Charisse will be discussing this item.
Yes, so the this item is on the 12-month requirement, and then of course, how that the board took the approved the legislative proposal to revise 2532.25 back in November of 2020. And as was reported earlier this morning, it's no longer going to be part of an omnibus provision, but part of the board's 2022 sunset review process. So we can obtain those statutory changes as part of the sunset review process, or try to do it that way. And then as of right now, that just means it'll be another year and change before the statutory takes effect, but I think that would be a good reason to go ahead and recommend that the Audiology Practice Committee start meeting to review what sort of regulatory amendments might be needed for those statutory changes, specifically to kind of look at what types of clinical rotations can be counted? Should the types of clinical rotations that can be counted depend on the type and level of supervision? Should the experiences be limited to certain years? Should there be any limitations? Or should this be at the discretion of the program training directors? What type of clinical clock hours can be counted? Direct patient care, contact hours, shift hours, simulation hours. Past few years have brought about quite a few changes to be able to be considered. And then also are there any considerations for students from out-of-state programs or federal visas? And then the last one for those pre-graduation hours, normally they don't have an RPE license, and would the students need to hold that or not? And we would just allow them to accrue a certain portion of those hours towards the 12 months. So just some of the issues that were up for discussion in prior meetings, and now would be kind of a good time to go ahead and refer this issue over to the Audiology Practice Committee to start fleshing out the regulatory changes that would go with the statutory changes that we hope to implement next year.
Okay, we'll be discussing that further in a few moments, but could you just clarify something for me? When an issue like this is in a sunset review and the sunset report is accepted, does that mean it circumvents the legislative process or just allows it to go forward? How does it work?
Actually, so the sunset review process is early in the legislative process. So usually hearings are in March or April, and all of those changes end up in one of the Senate Business and Professions or Assembly bills. So it doesn't circumvent the process. It's just flushed out more ahead, and then it's put into what's called a spot bill. They put a spot bill in every year for the sunset provisions. And that'll usually include a variety of things: updates to statute, reauthorization to exist as a board for another 4 years, and then substantive issues that either the committee or the board have brought up and want to implement. And so that's oftentimes where the board's going to highlight an issue inside of the sunset review report, talk about it at the sunset review committee hearing, and then that will eventually make its way into a bill. And that bill will go through the legislative process like a normal bill.
Okay, I understand now. Do we need, is there any other discussion about Teresa's comments about this particular issue? Seeing none, do we need a motion to move this or to refer this to the Audiology Practice Committee or not?
This
I'll
does, it
defer to
does not
legal.
require a motion as far as I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, can I ask for any public comment on item number 17, action regarding the audiology licensing requirements?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type. I would like to make a comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists. We will give you a moment. This is the moderator. I see no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, since we don't need a motion on this, we will move to the next agenda item, which has already been covered, number 18. So we'll move to number 19, discussion and possible action regarding continuing education, continuing professional development requirements. And I believe Sharice is going to discuss this topic.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Raggio. So kind of as a background, the hearing aid dispenser side and dispensing audiologist is inside of the California Code of Regulations 1399.140 at CEQA, and then the audiology and speech language pathology continuing education or continuing professional development requirements are in California Code of Regulations 1399.160 at CEQA. Back in November of 2015, the board approved revisions to the current requirements for speech language pathologists and audiologists. They also re-reviewed that in May of 2016 with a few additional changes. That's all provided in Attachment A. Around the same time, the hearing aid dispensers side and the dispensing audiologist had revisions made as well. So we've provided those current regulations. Since that time, there's been a lot of advancements in online self-study and online interactive. There's also issues that became more pronounced during the COVID-19 pandemic, where CE and CPD requirements have been temporarily waived through the waivers, but not the self-study, which has been difficult to obtain, especially when there's already more limited offerings on the dispensing audiologist and hearing aid dispensing side. And then the whole concept of continuing education or continuing professional development requirements are intended to protect California consumers by ensuring licensees continue to increase their professional knowledge and skills to maintain competency and enhance consumer services. Prior to the board-approved revisions being submitted to the Office of Administrative Law, the board, we think it's a good time for us to re-review the language in them to see if they are currently what best protects California consumers, or whether they're alternatives that incorporate new advances in online learning that could equally protect California consumers. And again, the board's purview and mission is consumer protection and ensuring that there is the best alternative is to protect the best regulations to protect consumers is what we're advancing, and to take into account there's quite a few changes in the last 6 years. So staff actually recommends that the current regulations for hearing aid dispensers and also the previously proposed changes to the continuing professional development requirements for speech language pathologists and audiologists all get taken to the practice committees in order to determine if there's additional revisions that are necessary and merited, and that those committees can take a much deeper dive into whether the professions and the general practice in their professions merits different considerations. Coming from a prior board at psychology, a lot of people are in their private practice and therefore they have less interaction with other practitioners. And so sometimes the continuing education that is live allows for that sort of participatory learning, also that kind of ethical checks. I would point out psychology is looking, and they've already noticed their new guidelines for CE, which are part of a national national state boards of psychology structure, which is a very different and complex system. And I'm not saying I would or would not recommend going that way, but it definitely looks at the practice and what's important for them and what helps maintain competency and improve skills there. And so I think it would be merited to have all of the practice committees take another look at what they're doing, especially before we go ahead and send our self-study CE regulations through the actual rulemaking process. And I have a few public comments that we received via email, but I'll go ahead and wait to read those to the board once we get to public comment.
Okay, are there any board member comments or questions on this item?
So basically, since this is my first time at this level with the separate committees, from this point, we would just get together with the separate committees to discuss it and then bring it back to the board.
Absolutely. That way the committee can flesh out actual revisions to the language that they believe are merited. They can get stakeholder input at that point and then bring back a fleshed out package to the board.
What is the typical timeline for something like that happening, from having, getting together with the meeting to bringing it back to the board?
Could be 3 to 4 months, could be 6 months or more.
Okay.
My distinction would be, as I came from psychology, and sometimes those are much longer conversations, and so it would take a few meetings and quite a bit of fleshing out before it became back to the board.
Okay.
So it would spend quite a while in committee, depending on the complexity of the issue. So.
And these would be meetings basically we just schedule amongst ourselves to meet.
Because it's your hearing aid, they're standing committees, they are publicly
Mhm.
noticed. So we would have them as a publicly noticed meeting of the hearing aid dispensers practice committee, the audiology practice committee,
Right.
and the
Okay.
speech language pathology committee.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, Sharice. I just have a comment on the Hearing Aid Dispensers Committee. Just wanted to point out that at this time, we don't have a quorum for that committee. And unlike other committees, that one is legislatively mandated. So it tells us exactly who's on the committee. So we're hoping and keeping our fingers crossed that we get somebody appointed on that really quickly so we could take action as a committee.
Yes.
Paul, can we hold discussions without decisions in that case?
Yes, that's correct.
You can hold discussions, but you can't vote on anything and vote to send it to the board.
Right.
But we could at least start the process.
It would start the discussions, absolutely.
Yes. I'm sorry, Holly, you have your hand up?
Yes. Yeah, actually, Todd asked some of the questions I had, so thank you for that. But further, since I'm new to the practice committee and I'm chairing it, I would like to understand whether the charge is to look at the language that specifically was focused on last time, with the that you have in the track changes copy, or is it looking at everything again within that law? I'm not clear on that.
It would be to look at everything. I mean, first off, go ahead and look at the changes that are already made, but if there's also additional changes that should be made.
Okay. Anyway, I agree. It's a very good idea to take a deep dive into this. And as you said, when you opened up, Sharice, so much has happened in the last year that impacts this.
Absolutely.
Is there any further board discussion or comments or questions at this point?
This is Gilda. I just want to say I welcome this task. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further board comments or discussion, I'd like to open this up for public comment.
Would you guys mind if I go ahead and read the written comments we received first prior to opening up the rest?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So a Kelly Douglas, licensed SLP, wrote to support the proposal that SLP continuing education requirements are in line with ASHA requirements and other professions that do not require the majority of the hours to be live. There are many reasons this is unreasonable. One is that the local live offerings are often related to school-based SLPs and don't benefit those of us in acute care. Also, most live offerings do not require any interaction, thereby negating the live aspect of the course. Requiring SLPs to have different standards than other professionals with advanced degrees is unreasonable, irrational, and detrimental to the profession. There are more quality online courses available that allow flexibility in scheduling and do not take away from crucial patient care, allow for financial limitations due to COVID and staffing, and allow for greater quality relevance of education. Please consider amending this requirement to be on par with PT, OT, RN, MD, RD, RT, and most other medical professions. We also have a comment from Natalie Gurman. Ray Christensen, Katrina Husted, Jenny Tipton. And that is respectfully submitting the names of myself and my colleagues who echo my sentiments in the joint effort surrounding our concern for quitting so many in-person continuing education hours for our California licensees. I used to think that this was a badge of honor that Californians had to obtain so many live hours as opposed to so many of our interdisciplinary colleagues, i.e. physicians. However, it is only that, a badge. I believe it is time to leave this antiquated requirement of so many live continuing education hours. The bullet points are being able to review information is a great benefit for recorded online learning versus in person when you cannot have someone repeat multiple points because you must move on. Following what our national governing and accrediting body recommends should be taken into consideration. Given financial constraints that are only getting worse, a huge consideration for online/recorded education hours should be made. No time off needed, no hotels, travel expenses. Can use the limited education monies allotted by institutions when we need them versus having to use the benefit because we will lose it. Questions and further discussion can always be posed to the lecturer as they are now for added understanding of needed via email or phone number. Con ed hours can still be offered in person for information needing to be hands-on, i.e. FEES passes, etc. Thank you for your time. Courtney Dillon, SLP. Please consider eliminating the live CEU requirement, especially since COVID-19 has forced the development of quality online pre-recorded opportunities. The end goal of maintaining the continuing education of speech-language pathologists can be accomplished through the use of webinar and online courses. This one is from 3 individuals, including Raven Ford, SLP, Melissa Burrup, SLP, and Rebecca Evand. And this is eliminate live CEUs because number 1, recent technology advances eliminate any previously perceived live benefit. 2, online live courses do not require live interaction for credit. 3, presenters are always available by email for follow-up questions or requests for clarifications. 4, our licensing fees are increasing and cost of live webinars are usually higher than pre-recorded offerings. 5, CA Licensing Board uses ASHA Code of Ethics for its guidelines, but not the CEU requirement. 6, COVID-19 has forced the development of quality online pre-recorded opportunities. 7, live requirement based on outdated brick and mortar paradigm that no longer exists. And then the last comment is provided by 8 individuals: Magali Benton, SLP, Elizabeth Hosey, SLP, Virginia Jones, SLP, Marissa McCrae, SLP, Alicia Montoya, SLP, Rachel Perrin, SLP, Kami Richards, RPE, and Melanie Bayara. And I'm writing in reference to item 19 on the Friday, May 14th board meeting agenda, discussion and possible action regarding, I'm just going to shorten that because it's the title of the agenda item. I would like to strongly encourage the board to eliminate the live in-person requirement with the growing availability of advanced pre-recorded seminars and rigorous research publications. This requirement has lost its value. Protection of California consumers is maintained by the quality of offerings made available up to and during the COVID challenges. Given that this requirement is unique to SLPs and AUDs, it seems arbitrary and unreasonable to maintain it considering no other professionals with advanced degrees in our clinical settings, RNs, PTs, OTs, LEPs, educators, and SLPAs share it. Thank you for your time and consideration of this impactful change. And those were all the written submitted comments that the board received.
Okay, can we ask for other public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on this item, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand side of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We will give you a moment. All right, we have a Melanie, we have a couple of people that would like to make a comment, starting with Melanie Vera. Melanie, you'll have 3 minutes and I'll give you 30-second warning. And Melanie, you have been unmuted.
I just wanted to thank the members of the board today for acknowledging this issue, adding it to the agenda, as well as reading those public comments that were emailed into you. This is a really important issue for all of us speech therapists, at least here in the Sacramento region, and I really appreciate your guys' consideration into making our jobs a little more valuable and worthwhile for us. Thanks, guys.
All right, the next comment is from Linda Pippert. Linda, you have been unmuted.
Thank you, board. Again, I'm a licensed speech language pathologist, and I certainly agree with all the written comments that were sent in and the oral comment that was just presented. The quality of online programming right now is really at an all-time high. It's been increasing over the last 10 years, and we literally can get quality online education in every aspect of the entire field. So we appreciate your consideration of eliminating the requirement that some of our CEUs need to be in person. Thank you.
All right, the next comment is from Michelle. Michelle, you've been unmuted.
Yes, I just wanted to echo the same sentiment with what was written, what was orally said. I would say that there's been a shift in paradigm, and even if it hadn't been, it feels very rushed because for some people, because of the pandemic and things being online, everything just seems so different for certain groups. But this is something that's been in the making and happening, and the quality is exceptional. And I think it really requires us to look at some of these very antiquated requirements and know that we need to move into this new age, which is really not that new, so that we can get education, continuing education to SLPs and audiologists. At the end of the day, it'll promote compliance. And I also believe that, you know, if we can make that kind of education more accessible, ultimately it just helps the California consumer. I yield my time.
All right, and the next comment is from Joanne Slater. Joanne, you've been unmuted.
Thank you so much. I am Joanne Slater. I am a member of the Continuing Education Board of the American Speech Language Hearing Association. I am also the Director of Continuing Education Administration for a company called Continued, which offers online continuing education to SLPs and audiologists through speechpathology.com and audiologyonline.com. We also offer online continuing education to professionals in occupational therapy, physical therapy, respiratory therapy, social work, and early childhood educators. And I just wanted to share with you that my knowledge of the CE rules and regulations for professionals in those professions across the United States is something that is part of my everyday review and concern. And the live requirements or the live course requirements for the California SLP Audiology Board are among the most stringent out of all of the boards for the professions that we serve in our online spaces. So I know several years ago the board had considered expanding the self-study allowance for SLPs and audiologists, and those rule changes were tabled for because there were other priorities that the board was facing at the time. But I just wanted to, again, thank you for revisiting this issue and encourage you to look at what other licensing boards are doing successfully without endangering the public in other professions. Thank you. I yield my time.
All right, this is the moderator, and that was the last request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes.
Okay, it's been closed.
So I'd like to thank all of the public members for their comments. And just wanted to verify with Charisse that those email, I assume they're email responses, public responses you got would be shared with the standing committee who will be looking at this issue?
Absolutely. I can share them all. I've already printed them out so we can include them. So far, I think they were all from the speech language side, but I can definitely share them with all the committees.
Okay. So I don't think we need a motion on this, but it does kind of segue nicely into item number 20, in which we're going to be talking about future agenda items and potential dates for standalone committee meetings, not necessarily topics, although I've been keeping a list as we've gone through the last 2 days of what topics might be addressed by the standing committees, which I can go over with Charisse later on. But can we move to item 20? Future agenda items and potential dates for standalone committee meetings.
Absolutely. So if any other board members would like to recommend future agenda items for the board, we can go ahead and get those now.
Can we talk about what this early morning we had a gentleman say something during open comment about audiology? Can we add that in for the next agenda item?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, and can I comment on that, Dr. Rajo?
Yes, please.
Yes, this is Paul Sanchez. Just along the lines of that comment, I want the board to know that anything that is presented as a public comment and as an agenda item, the board is going to hear it. However, it's not automatic that it's going to be at the next board meeting or at the next committee meeting. And sometimes, in our zeal to please and to try to get out there, we may have made that commitment to try to get it on the next board meeting. But I just want to make it really clear that we try to get all of these items onto the agendas. But sometimes, we have to prioritize, and sometimes we're just not ready. We want to make sure that we're ready to discuss an issue, that we've gotten the appropriate background materials, the appropriate experts involved in some cases, so that we could have a good discussion and accomplish what we're setting out to accomplish. So I just wanted to let the board know that we're not ignoring public comments. We are actually working towards getting those issues talked about. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree that topic needs to be addressed, and I hope to see it on the next agenda. But I think it will first go to the Audiology Practice Committee first. But I'd also like to add that the gentleman was actually mistaken when he said he's had no response from the board since last February. That's simply not the case in my experience. He has been responded to at least a couple of times, very recently, in fact. Are there any other issues you'd like to see for future agenda items? Holly?
In the last meeting, I mentioned the interest in looking at helping streamline applicants that are trained in foreign countries. And it did get in the notes, and it's something that the discussion led to the need to learn. Before looking at that, we need to really understand what the current process is. So since then, now I'm on the enforcement committee, so that will provide me a chance to learn more about that. So I guess I'm saying I don't want to lose touch with that being a future agenda item. I just see it being pushed out farther because there's a lot on our plate right now. So do we want to still list that as a future agenda item?
I think that this is something that we can keep on our radar, and I know that the important thing for us to do is maybe try to determine whether or not this is an issue that needs to be brought before the committee or the board. So I think what I was suggesting is, first things first, let's go and let's look at the processes and bring in our specific practice board members to look at what the processes are. That's what we've done in the past, and maybe we can go from there and see if there's any improvements that can be made.
That sounds good to me, and I'll look at your guidance for that process.
Thank you.
Dr. Rajo, this is Paul again. Another consideration that I think something we need to look at. We have several committees that are going on, and if we were to schedule all the committee meetings separate from the board meetings, we could find ourselves with, you know, with the sunset committee or the sunset meetings that are coming up. We could find ourselves with a lot of meetings this year. I mean, we could easily be at 10 meetings. So I do see the value in doing the committee meetings separately and standalone, but I also wonder if we want to do those committee meetings during the board meeting and have a longer board meeting. So that's something that we need to probably figure out. I don't know if we need to do it right now. We could probably even discuss it offline.
Yeah. I know we used to do that, where we would designate some of the normal board meeting to discussions of individual standing committees and then bring the report back the next day. I just want to make sure that the standing committees are able to discuss some of these issues. I think we're not going to get anywhere with some of them unless we do that. So however you want to do it, we can do it.
Well,
Yeah.
We can work with, Sharice and I can work with you and with the committee chairs and try to make that determination. I just want to ask for flexibility from everyone because I know you're all busy and I don't want to, you know, have you coming to a board meeting every month either.
I would also mention that it's not completely certain how long the state of emergency will last and how long we'll be meeting solely remotely. So those will also play into some of this as well, as to whether we should be having shorter committee meetings via WebEx that are separate from the board meeting, or maybe they're the first day of the board meeting. I think we definitely need to talk about all of that.
So can we go offline, not today, but in the coming weeks, to talk about committee assignments and then talk to those pertinent board standing committee chairs about
we can reach
those
out to
rather
each
than
of the
taking
board
time
committee
now?
chairs. Yeah, we can reach out to board committee chairs and ask them what the preference might be, and then also potential dates to send out if it's not going to be attached to a board meeting.
Okay, and we can talk topics at that point also?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, is there any further discussion from the board regarding future agenda items? Okay, seeing none, is there any public comment on future agenda items you'd like to see?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If a member of the public would like to make a comment on this agenda item, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We will give you a moment. All right, this is the moderator and I see no requests for public comment at this time. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
We were able to cover today's closed session yesterday, so we're not going to be obviously pursuing that, but I would like to turn the mic over to Paul Sanchez for a comment.
Yes, I have one more thing to add. I have what is probably good news and bad news. Bad news for the board, but good news for the citizens of California. We have had for the last few years the nice privilege of having Anthony Payne serve as our legal counsel. Anthony Payne is the assistant chief counsel to the board and works in a managerial capacity. But
he has been filling in as our legal counsel for the past couple years. Before that, we dealt with him as a supervising counsel. So he kind of oversaw the work of our previous legal counsels. And we just got news that Anthony has been appointed to be chief counsel over the California Citizens Redistricting Commission. He's also, there was a write-up about him in the Orange County Breeze newspaper there in Orange County about his appointment. Very interesting if any of you want to read it. But, you know, I'm just very kind of disappointed and bummed that we're losing him, but I'm also very happy for him. And I just want to thank him for his service to the board and congratulate him and wish him the best in his new assignment with the commission. Anthony, at this time, do you want to say anything?
Well, first of all, thank you, Paul. That was so kind. And I do want to just thank the board and the Department of Consumer Affairs. I've been at DCA for a little more than 3.5 years, and as Paul mentioned, board counsel for probably the last 1.5 to 2 years, and it's really been a privilege and to help you all do the important job that you have to maintain and enhance public protection. It's been a real privilege. I'm excited about the new challenge and appreciate the opportunity, but I'm going to be missing a lot of people here at the board. Paul's staff, Charisse, Heather, there's just so many people here that are very good, and he's got a great team. And I'm going to miss all of you. So thank you all so much.
So thank you, Anthony. I know I'll miss you. So, but wish you all the success in the future.
Thank you.
If there are no further comments, discussions that are not agendized, we can't talk about them anyway. So I would like to adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great